Hey, peace to the family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I am Ikemba, head writer and researcher of We Charge Colonialism. Here with my brother.
Hey, peace, everyone. This is Frank, the host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series.
All right, and so we are your team for this morning. Natasha, she won't be joining us this morning, but expecting her to get back with us next week. I want to send a shout out to her. She's doing a conference this morning. Most of our people, We Charge Colonialism, do a lot of organizing and work outside of this. So I just wanted to acknowledge her. Also, just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I know we've been going for probably a couple of weeks. I know we missed last week. So definitely feels good to be back, here with you, Frank. I know you was putting in some work yesterday, as usual. We Charge Colonialism, just for those people who are new to the podcast, a book club. We are a grassroots think tank, and our focus is really on putting out information, putting out data about African people, our experiences under colonialism, and things that we can do politically and economically to overturn the colonial situation. And so our message is for African people on the continent, for African people in the diaspora, because we believe that our destiny is linked. And so We Charge Colonialism is about the decolonization process. And so we want to appreciate everybody for viewing this, but we want you to we want you to, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our channel, but definitely like and share this podcast and book club so we can have other people who are engaged in this type of dialogue, which is necessary. Just another thing in regards to what we do, and revolutionary greetings to everyone out there. But we do the podcast and book club, and we put out other videos, but we also write articles. So make sure that you visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org. I'll give this message again. We have a bunch of articles. The next article, one that I'm working on, is dealing with decolonization and education, which will be out November the 1st. I'm actually doing a series on decolonization. Colonial education, just to be specific. So I'm going to do about a 4-part series on that. So I want everybody to look forward to reading those articles. So with that being said, We Charge Colonialism podcast book club is also expanding. And so those people who want to be a part of our book readings outside of this discussion that we have every Saturday throughout the week, you can join our Telegram, but you have to become a Patreon member. And so this is a way that you can support us and also be a part of a larger group discussion among members, Patreon members, and WCC members. So again, you can become a Patreon member by going to our account. You can see right there at the bottom. It's also in the description. All right, I got all that out the way for you. So we're going to do our weekly roundup as we do, and then we'll transition into our book reading in the second part of the podcast and book club. We're still on Pan-Africanism, a history. But just to get you guys prepared, in case you don't have the book, our next book is going to be Dr. Amerson Wilson, The Falsification of African Consciousness. I don't have it on hand, but we do have a PDF of that book. And so for those people who are going to be a part of our book club, we'll be reading that on the podcast, but those people who want to be a part of the larger discussion, you can become a Patreon member and join us in our discussion of Dr. Amerson Wilson's Falsification of African Consciousness. So we'll move into our weekly roundup, and then we'll go into our book reading. I think let's start off with Ye, and then we're going to get into the Kanye West story, and then we're going to, your story, Frank, is hitting home, right here in Philadelphia. So I definitely looking forward to that discussion. But Kanye West, of course, has been really in the media for the last 2 weeks. I think everybody has really been going in hard on Kanye West, and I was reading the article that made me want to talk about Kanye West this morning was when he began to start getting dropped by these different corporations, right? So Kanye West, he started to get canceled, and one of the things that it made me one of the things that I thought about, because Kanye West just thought he was just bigger than even the colonists, but I think that this shows when he started to go outside of the limits of what they want you to talk about, right? And I'm not saying with Kanye West, let me be clear, like I don't agree with Kanye West at all, but I think like it, they were able to show that Kanye West, anybody that's a part of the colonized oppressed, there's certain things that they're not going to allow you to say. And so, when he began to attack the corporations, you get what I'm saying? Like the people who were in positions of power and making money, off it. It didn't matter what he was saying until he began to start attacking the corporations and how they were exploiting the Black community. That's what was interesting to me. You know what I'm saying? And so again, it's not about me like agreeing with what Kanye West said, because he said some very inflammatory things. But I think like just to tie it into colonialism, though, because I think like it's important that we see the colonial relationship that we have, and what we can and cannot do in regards to when it comes to corporate media. Kanye West went beyond. He went from he went beyond what he was allowed to do as a I lost my train of thought. I ain't even gonna lie, man. Frank, but if you had any thoughts on this, man, you can tell.
Let me comment.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, the Kanye West situation, like, I don't want to say it can shock anyone, but maybe he didn't see it coming, but it was coming. And this is why when WCC, when we say the United States is still functioning on a colony, like an internal colony, that's what it means. So we as Black people in the United States, no matter how you want to see it or you want to call it, we live in a colony of the United States. It's still an internal colony, okay? And that is what happened to Kanye West, as you can see. So, and not just Kanye West, you can see the pattern of how Black people in this country are being eliminated the moment they began to speak of fairness in this country, right? The moment they begin to speak of fairness, or the moment they begin to speak of the injustices against Black people in this country, obviously they get you out of line, because the message from the other side is that how dare you talk about how you are being treated, when the fact is we are the one that have given you power. We are the one that have given you money. We are the one that have given you the fame to be to where you are. So how dare you come and talk about the ill behavior that we have done against you? Why can't you talk about the good thing that we have done? So that is how white America think or look like. Don't talk about the bad thing that white America have done to Black people or to African people. All we want you to focus on is focus on the good thing that we have done for you. Don't talk about the bad thing. But the good thing is, the good thing that they have done is just few individuals. And that's not how African society works. African society is not about few individuals. African society is collective. African society is communal. So we cannot see one person being on top, and then you say that the problem of African people or Black people are being solved because there is one person that is on top there, that the white man, that white corporate America is looking up to classify all Black people, the struggle of Black people, that, okay, you guys are not here. This is one African, this is one Black man on top here. So you guys have claimed the dollar. You guys are dead. That's not how in the African norms or the African culture, that's not how it works. All right. So by Kanye West being at the place he's at today, it's because he turned back in the mind of corporate America or white America. He turned his back on what he should have been saying, that, you know, black people, let us move on, forget about what white people have done to you. And, you know, if you are still living in that mindset, then it is up to you. Hey, look at me, Kanye West. I am billionaire. I am here, you know, all of those things. But the moment Kanye West turned around and said, oh, no, listen, the last time that I checked, it was not just, you know, I don't want to say it was black people this, but the condition in which black people are in, it was you that put black people in that condition today. You see it? And the moment he said that, they said that, you know, you cross your line. So you cannot measure your arm, you know, up to white people. And that's the situation Kanye West is in. And because of that, it's also making African people in this country who feel a little bit in power, who feel that they have money a little bit, they are afraid to come out to speak. And which, of course, I talked about it yesterday. They are afraid to come out to speak because the money they earn, it is not being earned by them. Okay? So it is not black money. It is white money given to black people. And that is why black people who are on top of that, they are afraid. Even Jay-Z, I can tell you, Jay-Z come out right now and began to talk about the injustices of black people in this country. Man, come on. You know what's going to happen? They're going to, you know, seize his bank account. They're going to lock it up. He's not going to, I mean, it's going to come a time, Kanye West, I think what's going to even happen to his bank account going to be locked up. You know, they're going to lock him up. Like, they're going to lock his bank account up where he can no longer have access to his bank, because they're going to put all these little allegations against him and stuff. Like, because the message is, they have to set a message to Kanye West and also to other black people who feel that they are in a position that they can speak of what is happening against black people. And that is internal colonization. You cannot speak against your master.
Yeah, and the thought kind of came back to me as you were speaking, and excuse me, I'm still under the weather, but you know, what I was trying to articulate was that Kanye West, he started attacking the corporations, attacking, you know, really the system though itself, you know, in the relationship, but it was the way that he explained it, right? So the way that Kanye West was going about it, which made it easy for him to be alienated, right, by all of these corporations, is that he attacked a particular group of people, and the Jews of all people, right? And so we know what happens when you come out against the Jews, just because of the history that they have, right? Particularly with the Holocaust, but even just a long history of persecution, because even before the Holocaust, you know, they're dealing with persecution throughout Europe. So when Kanye West, you know, make this blanket statement about Jews, it made it easy for them to attack him. But if he would have just focused on the system, and this is the lack of political education on Kanye West's part, because it didn't matter if it was, you know, Jews. Those Jews who are in those positions of power, who are able to do that, for one, it's not just Jewish people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different groups of people who are in those positions of power. There are black people who are in positions of power. You know, there are people in this. So, but it was a system that was developed through colonialism, that transpired 600 years ago, coming out of Europe, colonial capitalism, and this is what he should like really focused on. And so, you know, making it as if it was, you know, just a Jewish thing. No, there's particular people in positions of power who happen to be Jews. If it wasn't Jew, it could have been Italians. It could have been Anglos. It doesn't even matter under the system of colonial capitalism. It's the system that we're trying to attack. Kanye West doesn't want to, you know, he doesn't want to dismantle the system of colonial capitalism. He benefits from it. But anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but you know, that's what I was trying to get at in regards to this Kanye West thing. But we can, you know, sort of proceed to the next story if you want, or if you had any other thoughts on this.
Sure, we can get to the next story, but with the Kanye West issue, that just how it is. As a black man in this country, if you are being paid by the colonizer, you cannot speak against the colonizer, and that is internal colonization, and that is what we are dealing with. So, in a free and fair society, I think it shouldn't happen this way. If you are wrong, you are wrong. If you are offended someone, if they say it, and don't get angry. But again, that's how black people are in this country, as being treated as slaves, still being treated as people within a colony. And that is why a colony is, you live in our country, and the freedom that certain people enjoy, you cannot enjoy that freedom. Okay, so and that is what going on. As a black man in this country, you are not going to have the same freedom as a white person. Strictly, this is not something about hate, or this is not something about division and thing. It is what it is, and that's the truth. As a black man in this country, you will never ever enjoy the freedom as a white man. You're gonna have a level of some, but the only time you enjoy that freedom is to speak the language of the white man. That's it. That's the bottom line about it. So let me get to the next topic. The next topic here, sorry folks. The next topic here is a prison system in Philadelphia that recently, got busted, and they apologize of things that they have done, and I found this very interesting that I want to talk about it. So let me pull it out. So I'm going to mute myself as we play. I really want to talk about it. So
there's no other group in the United States of America that went through what we have been through in this country. That's why I am not trying to compare anything with other groups, because other groups don't have our story. Case in point, the city of Philadelphia just recently apologized for using Black inmates as guinea pigs. I want you to hear this clip.
30 years since Philadelphia's Holmesburg prison closed in 1995. And finally today, the city of Philadelphia issued a public apology to the inmates who were used as guinea pigs for extreme medical experiments conducted by the University of Pennsylvania. The vast majority of them were Black men. Part of the apology stated, from the 1950s to the 1970s, inmates were intentionally exposed to pharmaceuticals, viruses, fungus, asbestos, and even dioxin, a component of Agent Orange.
It was like the Macy's of human experimentation.
Tonight, we spoke with Alan Hornblum. Not many people know better what actually went on there than him. After completing his master's degree at Villanova, he began teaching a literacy program at the prison in the 70s, and then was compelled to author a book and produce a documentary, both titled Acres of Skin, detailing the atrocities at Holmesburg.
Anything anybody wanted to have tested on humans, even things that were toxic and carcinogenic and dangerous, could be done there.
In one case, he says,
5-6 dozen prisoners had dioxin applied to their backs and their faces, never being told what it was or how it could damage them.
He even has a prison logbook where it details which inmates were used for military testing.
They forgot their names. They didn't know where they were.
Tonight, Hornblum says the apology was long overdue, especially for building trust within the Black community.
Between what they've heard about Tuskegee, what they've heard relatives go through in the Philadelphia prison system, there's no great love, affection, or trust with doctors or the medical community.
Now, Benjamin Crump, if this story lands on his lap, I bet you Benjamin Crump, when he hear this, he's like, oh, he's going to do the Birdman hand rub. We're going to be doing this. Oh, yeah, I got to get him. And I hope he do. Because an apology, man, F an apology. What apology going to do? Y'all sitting up there infecting those brothers with funguses. Y'all infecting those brothers with viruses, using all kind of pharmaceuticals on these brothers, using dioxin. Y'all doing the most horrible things to these brothers. And y'all just talking about, oh, well, I'm sorry. We didn't mean to do it. What? No. No. Any survivor of those experiments that is alive today, hopefully, you need to be getting with Benjamin Crump and anybody else you need to be getting with and suing the city of Philadelphia, since they have admitted to using Black inmates as guinea pigs. And listen, this is not the only time that this has happened. We know we talk about Tuskegee. There's been times where Black people in hospitals have been given certain forms of, radiation to see how the body will respond to radiation, not even signing up for something like that. You understand what I'm saying? They've done all kind of gross experiments. You even have modern gynecology in this country. It wouldn't been for the experimentation done on Black women during slavery with no anesthesia, no nothing. Black people have always been experimented on by these people. You watch these horror movies and you see how they be, the Saw movies and all that kind of craziness. That's art imitating, a reality. They have always done some gross things to brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora that could be watching. Those in the Caribbean, those of you who are in Latin America, definitely. Central America, South America, those of you who are in, Europe, etc. This is the true history of what Black Americans have been through. Now you understand why we are so loud. Now you understand why we come across as aggressive. Because sometimes you say, well, Black Americans kind of come across aggressive. We have to be. We always underneath attack. You understand?
Okay, so I found this story very interesting. And like what Phil says in the video there, and trying to remind people that, look, when you come into this country and you see Black people or you see African people into this country behaving or acting the way they act, it's because of the systematic injustices, treatment that are being given to them. And that is why they are aggressive, because the system has made them to be like that. And the only way African people in this country can gain some attention or freedom, they have to be aggressive. And if you look at the history of this country, that's how African people in this country have come to get some sort of attention or freedom, because they were aggressive. If it wasn't because of aggressiveness, slavery was not going to end at the time it ended. If it was not because of aggressiveness, the right to vote in this country at the time it was given, it was never going to be given at that time. And if it is not because of aggressiveness, at some point, even we teach our history, the African history on Vera platform. If it is not because of aggressiveness, even on Vera platform, you won't be teaching the African history. And that is why they want we African to believe that it was Abraham Lincoln that just sat down one Sunday morning and gave freedom to Black people, because that's how they want to frame the story. It was not some white dude like just wake up one morning and just say, okay, we need to give freedom to African people. Let African people be free. No, that freedom came because Black people were being aggressive. And it is because of that aggressiveness that other entity that have come into this country even have the freedom to vote. If it was not because of Black people, Mexican won't be voting. Other nationality that came into this country won't be voting. They are voting, or they have some right to even get food stamp, or they have some right to even get a free medical card because of the aggressiveness of Black people in this country. So that is why when you come here, you don't just, if you don't know the story of Black people in this country, if you don't know the history of Black people in this country, don't just go at them and say they are being aggressive. You have to understand the underlying condition and factor to which they are aggressive. But one last point I want to make here. from this video of that experiment, medical experiment. Now you wonder why disease, now you wonder why sickness are into the Black community. Now, before you look at the Black community and says why African people are so sick in America, why the Black community disease are so, how to call it, proliferating in their community. These are some of the reasons. Now you wonder why sicknesses can't finish in the Black community, because it is deliberately put into them medically, medical apartheid. So why will sickness just be in one race or in one community? It's because they have been planted there. It's because they put it in them. And that is why disease or sicknesses are filled out in the Black community in America here. That is why they will tell you, say, Black America are the people that have the most disease, are the people that have the most sickness, are the people medically they are sick in this country. It is because white society put it into them. So they didn't just get up genetically and just start getting sick, because it was put into them. And that is why Black people have a lot of diseases in this country. Now, how can you say an apology? Do you know some of those people that were even free from those prisons, that went home, they passed the disease, they passed the sickness onto their loved one? And that is why Black people are being aggressive when they want to talk about these things. Let me leave it with you, Kimba.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you again, like bringing this story to light. And let's make no mistake, this isn't an anomaly, right? This doesn't, represent like a one-off. This is a microcosm of what is happening to Black folks, what has happened to Black people, African people throughout the states and throughout the world under this system, again, like a colonialism. I mean, I try to make it like as simple, make it, because I think it is simple. I think it's simple in regards to just like the relationship within this system, colonialism, capitalism being parasitic. And so the advancement of the oppressor, those people who represent the ruling class and those people who work in their interests, right? Those people tend to benefit, or they benefit through the labor, through the very life of the oppressed and the colonized. And so, I mean, they're able to advance their civilization just through experimenting. If they're trying to advance the sciences, the medicines, like who are they going to, look to experiment on? Like when you ever see those movies where they're like looking for this new tech, they're developing this new medicine, right? And they're like, oh, now it's ready for human trials. And so they're like, and then it's like this struggle over, no, we can't, experiment on humans. But like that really happens. Like when it's that stage of in development of some sort of medicine or whatever that they have, and they're ready for human trial, who are they going to experiment on, right? Or if they're trying to figure out what's going on with a particular disease, and they need to like let it go through its cycle, who are they going to like experiment on? It's going to be the colonized. It's going to be African people. It has always been. And so when we think of a lot of these diseases and viruses that we're dealing with today, as you mentioned, Frank, like as African people, it is a result of this colonial relationship that we do have. We experience it at a high level as a result of this relationship. So in order for us to overturn that, the answer is for us to be self-determined people. I think that's the bottom line. And so how does a self-determined people operate? They control their institutions. They control the medical institutions, the health institutions, the educational institutions, the economic institutions, and the political institutions. There isn't this dependency on the colonizer anymore. So that's the answer to that. So I appreciate you bringing that. We're going to transition though into the book club. Unless you had any final thoughts on that, Frank.
I mean, my only final thought will be, we as African people, we shouldn't get it twisted. Just what They are still doing these things. By the way, it's still going on right now. Okay, in most of the prison system in this country, it's still happening. Even apart from the prison system, even how do they call it? When you go for these doctors' appointment and so forth and things, I mean, it's happening secret. And one last thing I want to add out, they are also doing these things on the African continent. Most of the time, these are NGO, these are humanitarian, with the pretext humanitarian purpose, like they are medical doctor, they go, a medication or services to African people and these things. So when they go, it's the same experiment they are going on doing down there on African people. They are going there to do their research and so forth and things. So what they're doing here, they also take it to the African continent. And that is why sometimes when they go there, we tell our people, like, look, listen, these people, there's nothing free. They are coming to do their medical experiment. They are coming to put things into you that they want to do. It's not free. Those things are not safe. So they are also doing the same thing on the African continent once they leave from here. So this thing is still going on. This is just one aspect of the story that came out in Philadelphia. So just imagine, if it happened in Philadelphia, it also happened in New York. It also happened in New Jersey or DC or Maryland or so forth. Just name it. It also happened there. So it was not just in Philadelphia. This thing took place.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So again, I want to appreciate everybody, is tuning in, is active in the chat, is making this podcast book club, happen, continuously happen, and understanding the importance of these discussions. Make sure for those people who joined us a little late, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. I think we need to set a goal, man. 10,000. We need to get up to like 10,000 subscribers, man. So let's get y'all y'all help promoting this channel and making sure you tune in to all of the other discussions that we have outside of this podcast in book club. So the other thing too, make sure you become a Patreon member and be a part of we're expanding the book club. Outside of these discussions we have on Saturday, we're about to begin discussing the falsification of African consciousness. That's the next book we're going to be transitioning to. And so to be a part of these larger discussions that we're going to have with WCC members and Patreon members, you can join our Patreon account. So with that being said, that information is in the description. Become a Patreon member today. So we're going to transition to the book now. So Pan-Africanism history. I'm going to put it on the screen. There's a link in the description to send you to the book so you can read along with us. I'm going to share my screen right now. Right. So we're going to be starting from chapter 9. This is page 185, chapter 9. African culture is revolutionary or it will not be. African culture got to be revolutionary. There's no other option under the system of colonial capitalism. I think even Pan-Africanism, itself, like if that, well, let's get into this reading and we'll have that discussion. So African culture is revolutionary or it will not be. The Black Power era is associated with the demands for political empowerment and the African diaspora, as well as the African continent, but also with a significant critique of Eurocentrism and its denigration of African culture. In opposition, there emerged numerous manifestations of a cultural revival, which again stressed the importance of respect and admiration for African cultures, histories, languages, textiles, clothing, hairstyles, aesthetics, and music, and was most succinctly encapsulated in the memorable phrase, "Black is beautiful." There were, of course, early manifestations of this approach, such as the Harlem Renaissance and New Negro movements, in the United States in the 1920s, and then those trends that culminated in the emergence of negritude in the Francophone world in the 1930s. Indeed, the affirmation of the legitimacy of African Black culture has been a constant feature of Pan-African struggles against racism and Eurocentrism throughout the 20th century as well as before. It is evident in the activities of numerous personalities, including Martiniano Elisu do Bonfim in Brazil, Jacques Roman in Haiti, and Nicholas Gillian in Cuba, as well as those of Amy Ashwood Garvey, Catherine Duham, Paul Robeson, and many others. In the post-1945 period, such concerns remain, as did the efforts to address them. Several significant initiatives occurred in Europe and Africa in this period, some inspired by the famous Bandung Conference. However, initiatives which emerged at the height of the Cold War and bipolar division of the world were subject to the political contention and dynamics of that period, which intensified following the announcement by the government of the United States of the Truman Doctrine and Marshall Plan in the late 1940s. From this time, criticism of the foreign policy of the United States in anti-colonial and anti-imperialist perspectives were often presented as sympathy for communism. They were often used as a pretext to attack those struggling for African and Pan-African liberation. Let me stop there before we go on to the next page, because I think there's some things that we can like really build on here. First of all, like this entire book, you know, for those people who been reading along with this, hopefully you had the opportunity to like really go through the whole text, because I think like this book doesn't just represent a good history of Pan-Africanism, but also like it gives us a clear understanding of just like the ideology as a movement and the ideology in regards to just like what went into the development of the Pan-Africanism that we know of today. Because there's different like state. I think that you look at Pan-Africanism throughout their history, there is different stages. And so right here, because the last time we discussed, we were talking about Black Power, and I think like what happened during the Black Power movement with Black Power and Black nationalism, that is too. You know, I think like that helped transform Pan-Africanism from sort of like this this movement that was only really represented by those people that were in the quote unquote upper class of the African community, you know, the so-called, you know, intelligentsia, really like the intelligentsia and the intellectuals of the African people. So those were the people who really represented and led the movement of Pan-Africanism. So with the Black nationalist movement, though, and the Black Power movement, it became more of, I think, a mass movement, and it revolutionized, too, like the ideas of Pan-Africanism. And so, you know, first of all, I just wanted to, you know, bring up that point, but I appreciate, too, like in the first, at least in the first paragraph, it kind of talks about the development of Africa, Pan-African, the idea of Pan-Africanism. Well, how can I say this? Like during the colonial capitalism is like what really like motivated this idea of Pan-Africanism, because of the oppression and colonization of African people. And so like even like Africa, us saying that we are African people, like that's a revolutionary like concept and idea, you know, for us to say like, you know, we are one people, understanding like there's different, you know, cultures within the African community, but us being one people, like that was for political reasons. And so it kind of gets into this like this resistance against Eurocentric ideas of what it meant to be Black and African, and us saying like, no, like, okay, yes, we are Black and African, but this is what it means. Like we're going to determine what that means. And so we're going to define our culture. We're going to define our political movement as African people, as Pan-Africanists. So that was just something else. And just the last point too, like in this paragraph right here, when it talked about how they were, the last sentence, they were often used as a pretext, well, last two sentences. From this time, criticism of of the foreign policy of the United States and anti-colonial and anti-imperialist perspectives were often presented as sympathy for communism. They were often used as a pretext to attack those struggling for African and Pan-African liberation. I think this is also important because this is often used today. Any liberation movement that African people are involved in, there's always this tendency to put us in the camp of communists or socialists, like sympathizers, and don't get me wrong, like shit, I'm a socialist all day. Like socialist principles, I think is what is needed for us to like overturn the system. But what happens is like this divide within the European world, because there's conflict in the European world and these competing ideas, it has an impact on the colonized world. It's impacting the colonized world and their treatment of the colonized. If we look at the history, there's always been when there's slavery, chattel slavery, just these last examples. I know, Frank, you probably got a lot to say, but like chattel slavery, for example, was a divide in the European world, the United States in particular, a divide in their world that ended slavery. African people, we fought and ended slavery, but because of this conflict, because the division between them, it makes them vulnerable. This vulnerability allows us to be able to infiltrate, be able to, attack the system and overturn it. And because of this divide between the Europeans, and they had this civil war, we was able to get involved in that and dismantle slavery. But it's the same thing with colonialism, this divide within the European world over these competing ideas. And so it's like you're either down with us or you're down with them. And so, the capitalist tries to appease African people, to get them to side with them. And if we don't side with them, we side with their enemies, or even if we don't side with them, then it's like you're siding with their enemy, right? And so this is something that we have to be very clear of. But that's, just a thought that came to me when I was reading that. You had any thoughts on that, Frank?
When first of all, the topic of this discussion today, African culture is revolutionary or it will not be. Let's look at the reality here. The entire war right now, as it run on revolutionary, it run on interest, it run on people coming together and finding their common interests and what they for them. I don't know why my internet is giving problem today. First of all, let's look at this. When J.A. Hooker said the greatest threat to the United States is Negro unity, what he means by Negro unity, first of all, it refers to Black people, where you live or not, whether you live on the African continent or you live in the diaspora, it refers to you as Negro. All right. And that Negro unity that J.A. Hooker was talking about, he was talking about Pan-African. So that's the threat he was talking about. If African people, whether home and abroad, recognize themselves as African and come together, it will be one of the greatest threats to the America, to the Europe, or to the European nation, or to the colonizer. So when he said Negro unity, he wasn't talking about just African people within the United States. He was talking about Pan-Africanism, because one of the greatest threats and even up to today of white supremacy is Pan-Africanism. One of the greatest threats of the colonizer is, or was, and still it is, Pan-Africanism. And that's why they do not believe in the ideology of Pan-Africanism. For each time they see African man or an African woman with an idea of Pan-African, they automatically go against you and they become afraid of that idea, because that idea alone, Pan-Africanism, it unites African people, both home and abroad. It identify their culture, it identify who they are, And that's why J. A. Hooker was talking about. He do not want for African people in the America to identify themselves, to identify with their culture, with their root, to know who they are. Because if they know who they are, it will be a greater threat to the colonizer, because they will not be part of the institution of the colonizer. They will not fight the colonizer ideology in favor of the colonizer. They will not be in the institution of the colonizer to support and uphold the institution of the colonizer against their own people, against another black man, against their own continent, against their own identity. That's what he meant. Negro unity is a threat to the colonizer. Okay? That's what he meant. And the reality here is, even Europe, they form a revolutionary. Today we use the terms European Union. Do you know when that European Union came about? Or what it came about? It came about when they were ready to exploit African people in the 1884 Berlin Conference. And that's how that European Union came together. So European Union did not start in the 1600 or the 1400. That European Union came about around the 1884 Berlin Conference to come together to form a union, to form a revolutionary, to go against African people, to be one army, to be strong with one voice, with one interest. So if we are to turn the table upside down as African, we have to be a revolutionary. We have to come together as well, just how other folks, other people, other races are coming together. And that's how we need to do to turn the table around as well. So it is a must.
Yeah, hey, great point in regards to the unity, and comment in the chat in regards to African unity as well. Again, like that is the importance. That's going to be the key to overturning this relationship right there. Pan-Africanism or African internationalism, which is theory of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Like these theories right here, or movements, is about African unity, bringing African people together, right? As a political and economic unifying force. This is the weakness in Europe, and their strength. And going back to the point I was making earlier, they're vulnerable because they're not totally or completely united, but there's enough of them united in regards to the colonial capitalist world. But there's also, the world, because there's countries like Russia, right, who represents the other side, and those people who side with Russia, who represents another set of ideas, right? And so, these competing forces makes them vulnerable. And so as long as they're not united, but as long as they're not united, we have an opportunity to be able to overturn this system. But we have to cause more division. We have to cause division even within the colonial capitalist world. Those Europeans who are, within the colonial capitalist world, like dividing them against each other, because that, again, World War II is what weakened them. And Kwame Ture talks about this. Kwame Ture talks about, hey, one thing that Hitler did is he weakened Europe, which ended colonization, formal colonization in Africa. And so Africans benefited from what happened, from what Germany did. You know what I'm saying? Now, there may be groups of people out there who don't like that, that type of rhetoric. But in the interest, because it wasn't in their interest, but in the interest of Africa, what's good for you or what's bad for you may not be bad for me. What's good for you may be bad for me. So, what's in our interest is important. So let me try to get one more paragraph and then I know we're running short on time. So I'm going to go to this next paragraph, page 186. In the United States, leading cultural figures and intellectuals such as Paul Robeson and Du Bois, as well as their campaigning organizations, the Council of African Affairs, were especially targeted by the government. In Nigeria, Fumi Ransom Kuti received similar treatment. The Cold War period also highlighted significant differences of orientation amongst those who considered themselves adherents of Pan-Africanism. The post-war period was one in which the two distinct trends emerged within the broad Pan-African movement, especially regarding cultural matters. One tended towards an emphasis on forms of negritude, Black pride, and cultural nationalism, and the other towards an emphasis on class struggle, internationalism, and various forms of Marxism. This divergence was particularly evident at the time of the Sixth Pan-African Congress in 1974, but it had first manifested itself much earlier in the century. Century for African Studies. I think, like, just to make some final points. We might not have enough time to go into the next few sections, but just a few points in regards to go back to this. The movement, the movement to take place to develop Pan-Africanism, and sort of like, that's the point I want to make in this paragraph. It talked about these two trends, Marxism, right? Communism, and sort of like cultural nationalism, Black pride, right? So these two different camps. And I think like today, there has sort of been this bridge that's been created too between the both of them. I think African internationalism is a good example of that. But I think it's important, though, that we don't get caught up in thinking because we're espousing socialism, or what many would consider, communism, that like we're Marxists, because we're not Marxists at all. The principles of socialism was not created by Marxists. As a matter of fact, socialism was actually a movement, but been around before Marx was even, thought about. But the practice of socialism or communalism is as old as human existence. So with that being said, us taking the principles of socialism does not necessarily mean that we're Marxists. So we shouldn't be scared to say that we're socialists. We shouldn't be scared to say that we're anti-capitalist. And understanding that a free, there's no such thing as free market, but a market economy or trade doesn't necessarily mean that you're engaged in capitalism. I think we get caught up in people saying that capitalism existed on Africa for a long time. Like where were they practicing capitalism? Like this private ownership of land and being able to exploit, where an economy is driven by their pursuit of capital, greed, this motivation of just needing more and more. No, like that did not exist on the continent. And nobody can show me an example of that. So, but that's just one thing to stand out. But I think it's important that we infuse the two, though. Like we have to be very well versed in the traditions and the history of Africa and be very African centered. But to be able to develop a scientific theory, to be able to dismantle colonial capitalism in our approach, and I think like this is something that really divided us in the 60s and 70s, is that there were these two camps. There were the revolutionary nationalists, and then there were the cultural nationalists. I'm just going to use those two, like, it wasn't really black and white, but, just use those two terms. And so you had those people, like the Black Panthers on one side, and then those people, cultural nationalists, on the other side, and it kind of weakened us as a people. But we have to understand, like, we're all in this for liberation. So I just wanted to make that quick point. I know we're running out of time, but Frank, if you wanted to add anything.
Just like you said, we should not be afraid to talk about capitalism. And let me just add to that. And the reason why we cannot be afraid is because I don't think as African people, we control the production, the distribution of goods and services. Okay? We do not control the money, the capital, because the US dollar is not African people dollar. It's not African made. The EU or the European dollar or the European Union or the pound, it is not African made. and it is not being controlled by African. Tell me, which one of the currency in the world that is being controlled by African people or that is being controlled by black people? None. So that is why we are not part of the capitalists. That is why we are not capitalists. And that is why we cannot be afraid to talk against the capitalists. Okay? Because we do not control the means of production. We do not control the means of distribution of goods and services. We do not control the means of any extracting the resources. Even though we have a continent, which we can say is the most richest continent in the world, but yet then still we do not control it because we still have those colonial institutions and policies and constitutions running the country. And that is why when we talk about unity, and the only way we can turn that around is we coming together. Because we do not control anything. We do not control the capital. There is no currency in the world that is being controlled, that is on the chart, or that is on, or how they call it, that thing, Wall Street, or whatsoever, or the Barclays Bank, or whatsoever they call it. All right? There is no currency that is being controlled by black people, by African people. The currencies that we are using today, it is being controlled by the colonizer. So that is why we are not part of the capitalists. We are just maneuvering our way through the system. We are just finding a way to work through the system, but we are not part of that system because we do not have voice and we do not control the system. The system we need to control and have voice in it is a socialist.
Yeah, indeed, man. So, again, I want to appreciate everybody, for joining us. I wanted to put out this update because there was, there was a pact, I guess you could say, rally for Mumia taking place earlier this week, and Sayero gave us an update in regards to that. The appeal, the court date has been moved to Mumia Abu-Jamal and his appeal for a new trial was pushed to December 16th. So that October 26th was the court date, and so they pushed that to December 16th. There were folks rallying out there December 26th. October 26th. I was supposed to be out there, but due to my health, I couldn't be out there. So it's important, man. Like we really take care of ourselves, because I was supposed to even take on a particular role, but it shows the importance because as a revolutionary, I mean, it's one thing to to have theory, but being able to practice revolution as well, to be involved. And the only way you can do that too is if you're in good health. And so we have to really take care of ourselves and definitely understand that under the system, as we talked about earlier, Frank, when you brought up, how come, we have so many, diseases and so forth, it's, purposely done under the system. And even if you argue that it's not purposely done, you can say that it's a product of the system that we're living under. There's no way in the world that you can say it's just, because of, because African people are of a weaker genetic, mutation or something, come up with some sort of excuse. You can't say that, we're first, great. I ain't even gonna get into just how great we are, biologically, physically, mentally, and so forth, right? I think the effects that we have is a result of this relationship. And so with that being said, we have to be very conscious of that, and so make better decisions in regards to our health, what we're eating, how we're living, so that we're able to carry out this work. Because it feels bad when you're not able to do that. I missed a couple of shows, a couple of WC podcasts because I wasn't able to, be here because I was ill. And so that can have an effect on you. So, Mumia, December 26th, December 16th, free Mumia. If you're able to be there to support in Philadelphia, you could do that. But you can also, spread the word and let people know. That's another way that you can support Mumia. He represents one political prisoner of many political prisoners. We got to bring Dr. Mutulu Shakur home as well. Also in Boston, November 5th is going to be a Curb Fest, which is revolving around bringing awareness to political prisoners. So, you can check out We Charge Colonialism's Instagram page, my Instagram page, get more information on this, Global Ubuntu Foundation. Again, thank everybody for joining and tuning in to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. We're going to be back here next week, same time, 10 a.m. Make sure that you continue to, share this podcast with your other folks so that we can get more people involved in these discussions. So, Frank, you have any last words before we?
No, man, we good. Just share the live, subscribe, and ask others to subscribe. Let us build this revolutionary struggle.
Yeah. I struggled through this one this morning, man, but I wanted to be here though and had this discussion. So appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Till next time.